Jewish Education in Media is pleased to present L'Chaim, a program that highlights the people, issues, and events of importance to the Jewish community. Now here is your host, Rabbi Mark Golub.
I'm Mark Golub, and in this wondrous world, there are a handful of the most extraordinary human beings who, through a combination of immense talent and enormous hard work, dedication, and passion from the deepest recesses of their souls, achieve a level of excellence that is both breathtaking to behold in whatever their field, just breathtaking, awe-inspiring to encounter. And at the same time, they elevate the human spirit and make visible the miracle of the divine in this universe. On this edition of L'Chaim, I have the enormous honor to present to you such an individual who is simply one of the greatest musicians to have spanned the 20th and 21st centuries. Itzhak Perlman, who, as I'm sure virtually all of you know, is simply the world's greatest living violinist. And for those of you who may not have an intimate knowledge of Itzhak Perlman's amazing career, he's played with every major orchestra in the world and with every major conductor, beginning with his first major competition win at Carnegie Hall in 1964 at the age of 19, the Leventritt Prize, which won him an appearance with New York Philharmonic Orchestra, which was then being conducted by Leonard Bernstein. During his storied career, Itzhak Perlman has won 4 Emmys, 15 Grammys, including a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award for his excellence in the recording arts. If you saw Schindler's List, and who didn't, Itzhak Perlman is the violinist you heard playing the John Williams score. He's played for presidents and royalty around the world, has broken musical barriers in Eastern Europe, in the former Soviet Union, in China, appearing with the Israeli Philharmonic Orchestra in Warsaw and Budapest, Moscow and Leningrad. In 1986, President Ronald Reagan awarded him the Medal of Liberty, a medal reserved for foreign-born Americans, since Itzhak Perlman was born in Tel Aviv, Israel in 1945. And in the year 2000, President Clinton awarded Mr. Perlman the National Medal of Arts. And by the way, if you've never had the chance to hear Itzhak Perlman play in person, you have that opportunity to do so on December 3rd, as Itzhak Perlman will be performing at Avery Fisher Hall in his first solo recital at Lincoln Center in 7 years, when he'll be joined by his longtime recital pianist, Rohan da Silva, to play works by Vivaldi, Schumann, Ravel, and Beethoven. So make a note, December 3rd, Itzhak Perlman at Avery Fisher Hall. And there's one more thing you should know about Itzhak Perlman. Often, superstars in any field tend to be aloof and arrogant and self-absorbed. Everyone who knows Itzhak Perlman, everyone who's had the good fortune to be included in his world, every young violinist with talent lucky enough to be mentored by Itzhak Perlman, they'll all tell you he's one of the nicest, sweetest, and loveliest superstars you could ever hope to meet. A superstar mensch. And Itzhak Perlman, I can't tell you what a kick and honor it is to have you on L'Chaim and JBS Shalom TV and to give you some time. Thank you very, very much.
Look, you said everything already. I can go now. You know, I mean, we
but
don't
there's
need
so
to
much
talk.
No, I want to know. I want to talk about you, and then I want to talk about music. And I wanted to be clear, both to you and the audience. There are fields I know intimately and fields I know casually. I am not an aficionado when it comes to either the violin or classical music. I grew up in a home where for me personally, it was My Fair Lady and Camelot and every
Nothing wrong
Broadway
with that.
show. But my father and mother, especially my father, loved classical music, and my favorite piece was Beethoven's Violin Concerto in D major, and I would listen to it over and over. And when I began to play the piano,
And was it my recording or was
of
it
course.
just
Well,
somebody else?
Unfortunately,
I mean, really.
when I first was listening, my age makes it impossible for me to
That's
listen.
no excuse. You have to listen to my recording
Okay.
no matter what age you were.
Bo, do you like that piece?
Oh my God, it's it's the piece.
It's the piece.
It's the piece.
That's
it's
so
the
nice.
crown. It's the jewel on the crown of the classical music.
Okay. If I thought to tell you
repertoire.
to bring your violin, I would have asked you to play the few. But I'm so glad that you liked it also. Anyway, but your world is not my world of expertise. At the same time, I'm just a guy who is thrilled. Everything you've done.
To enjoy anything, I don't think you have to be an expert. You have to just say to yourself, I like this, I don't like this. Or you can say, I don't understand it. But, there's no pretense about, what, I mean, it reminds me sometimes, I'm a kind of a wine aficionado. Somebody you say, I don't know anything about wine. And so, well, you don't have to, all you have to know is, do you like it? Do you hate it? That's all, you have to start with all of that stuff.
So I want to talk first about you, and then I want to talk about music. And what I know of you is that you were born in Tel Aviv, August 31st?
August 31, 1941. 45.
August 31, 1945.
Yeah.
And your parents were Chaim
Chaim and Shoshana, yes.
And they were from Poland.
Yes.
And they came to Israel and met in Israel.
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
In the 1930s.
Beginning of the 30s.
Okay.
Yes.
They get married and they have you as a child.
Yes.
Are you an only child?
Yes.
Okay. And you live in Israel the first part of your life before you come to the United
for the
States.
first 13 years of my life.
Okay.
I was bar mitzvahed in Israel.
Do you remember that?
Of course.
Where was that?
I don't remember where it was. I remember it was the only time that I actually went to a proper shul to do my Haftorah. It was a beautiful shul in Tel Aviv. Because the rest of the times, to celebrate the holidays, we lived in a neighborhood. As a matter of fact, it was next to the zoo, which doesn't exist anymore. And about a block away, they would hire every Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, they would hire a little room in an apartment building, and would put the Aron Kodesh, and people would just go to the room and pray. And when the holidays were over, people would hire the room to show movies. And that was it. That was my experience as far as for the bar mitzvah to go to a proper shul was very, very exciting.
Was it a warm experience for you, or did you resent it?
No, I didn't resent it. It was very, very nice. It was, look, today bar mitzvahs are productions. I mean, it's gone. With me, it was so simple. My parents could not really afford anything. So we had, in the morning, I went to the shul, I did my Haftorah, then we went out, then we went back to our apartment. We had lunch for 10 kids or 8 kids. That was it. And I got my present.
What was your present?
A globe of the world. I was dreaming about the globe. I saw a globe of the world. And so that's what I wanted. But of course, that wasn't the globe that I wanted. They got me the cheaper globe. It was one of those, a globe. I wanted a globe. They got me a globe. And then I got a little pen,
Classic.
And that was
Classic.
it.
Okay. Your parents, who were they? And what I mean by that is, and we're going to talk about you as a child who begins to gravitate to the violin, but I want to, in a Jewish context, and how they felt about Israel and what they communicated to you about those two, Judaism and Israel. Who were your parents?
My parents were Zionists. They came to the state. They came to Israel in the early 30s, taking a boat by themselves at the early age. I mean, I'm always amazed how anybody of so young can just pick up by themselves and with no family, no mishpocha, no nothing, to go to a country where they did not know. It wasn't like Uncle Joey is waiting for you in Tel Aviv and he's going to put you up. Nothing. And they went there to see what's going to happen, and I think my mother, I think, joined the kibbutz. I believe it was called Kibbutz Brenner at that time. And I think my father was in Tel Aviv working construction. And then they met, you know, and it was one of those things where they both did not really have anything specific that they did. So my mother, who was a sort of Eshet Chayil, you know, she was an amazing woman. Had she lived today, she would have had her own business because she was so inventive. So she was a seamstress, which she taught herself against the support, despite the lack of support that she received from her parents. Mm-hmm. And when she came to Israel, she decided she was going to be a barber. So she became a barber. And they opened a barber shop. And when she met my father was not a barber. So she taught my father how to be a barber. And so when I was born, it was at the time where they had a barber shop across from the apartment that we were living in center Tel Aviv, you know, the old section of Tel Aviv. Today it's the old section of Tel Aviv. And so I remember, you know, we used to live in a single room, and you know, no money at all. Mm-hmm. And of course, I was given always the extra piece of chicken, and my mother would always have the innards, and my father and so on, and they would work so hard, and they would always describe to me a typical dinner with them, which was for a gush v'chetzi, for a penny and a half. And they would have a decent piece of watermelon and a piece of bread. Mm-hmm. And that was dinner. And, you know, and for Friday, there was, you know, a little chicken and some chopped liver. And then we were able to buy a couple of more rooms. So we had our own bathroom, because before we lived in the room where we used the people who owned the other apartment, we used their bathroom. But then we bought them out. So we had the bathroom. So then I had the experience every Friday to play with the carp that my mother would buy to do the gefilte fish. And so Thursday the carp arrived, and Thursday I would play with the carp, and I would bond with the carp. And we were very, very good friends. And Friday my mother would take our skillet and boing across the head, and there was no carp, and I would be very upset. Uh-huh. And then we would have the gefilte fish. Mm-hmm.
It's, you know, a 13-year-old sees things in a very different way than an adult. So in some way it's unfair to ask you, but as you look back on it, did you consider yourself that you had a good childhood? Was it a hard childhood?
I think that I had a pretty good childhood. They moved, my parents moved to a neighborhood in north of Tel Aviv because there was a school a block away. So that way I was able to walk to school every day. And I had friends. The only weird thing that I had to do when I was a child was to practice 3 hours a day. That was weird.
You had to, or you wanted to?
I had to. I didn't want to. Are you kidding? I hated it.
No kidding.
Yeah, no, didn't like it. Didn't like it.
All right, so transition with me for a moment. Again, you know, you can read a lot about you online.
Well, probably whatever I'm telling you, you can read. You know, it's
so far it's all new. But I want to tell you a story that is about you, and you tell me if it's true. That your first interest in the violin occurred when you were as young as 3 years old.
Yeah.
And the story is you wanted to play the violin, and you went to some place, and they said your hands weren't big enough. And you went back and you took a toy violin and you taught yourself how to play. How real is that story?
Partially real, partially not real. The true story is that I wanted to play. My parents gave me a violin. I tried it. It didn't sound very good, and I threw it under the bed, and that was the end. And then we waited another year.
Yes.
Yeah. And then afterwards, I had polio at the age of a little bit after 4.
So stop for one moment.
Yeah.
You're 4 years old, and how do you learn you have polio?
Oh, it's, you know, one day I couldn't walk. It was very simple. One day
How
I was
scary
weak.
was that for you?
It wasn't so scary. It was very, I couldn't explain it. I said to my parents, I'm weak, I can't walk. It was the end, you know.
What'd they do for you?
They, well, they did the normal thing, which is I was in the hospital for 2 or 3 weeks, which I was kind of I was out of it. I remember, I keep remembering watching the window in my room. The sun goes down, the sun goes up, and so on and so forth. So that was, and then afterwards, they did the normal things, which is exercises and so on, fit me for braces, stuff like that. You know, it was like, look, when you are a kid, when you're young, you get used to anything. It's not like you have your years and years of way of living and so on. All of a sudden, boom, somebody knocks it out, and it's like, it was you know, I couldn't walk anymore with my own power, so braces, crutches, and so on and so forth.
And you did well on braces.
It was fine. It was fine. Violin, you know, it's very, very funny. I did. There was a guy who made me, I believe, shoes, and I think maybe braces. I don't remember. And he was in Bnei Brak, and so I'm singing. I'm playing with Itzhak Perlman, with a wonderful cantor, and we're doing the show. And we start to talk, and he's talking about this guy who makes shoes and braces, you know, in Bnei Brak. I said, what was his name? He said, Boer. I said, oh my God, that's the guy. So the guy, when I was 6 years old, he's still alive, and he's still making braces and stuff. Unbelievable, such a small world.
But the reality is, you simply adapted.
No, absolutely. But you adapt because you have support you have a support system, and in my case, my parents.
Were they good at it?
They were very natural at it. You know, I mean, it came to playing the violin. You know, I mean, my legs were affected, not my hands. So what's the big deal? Of course you play. And then there was no big deal about, you know, like, oh, you can do anything you want. You know, if I didn't practice, there was hell to pay.
But it never made you angry, the polio.
No.
To this day, it doesn't make you angry.
No.
You've just lived with it.
Yeah, well, it's one of the things,
Okay.
you know. I mean,
But you know
angry is
there
not
are-
going to help me.
I understand. You know, however, it is a remarkable aspect of who you are.
Well, you know what makes me angry? What makes me angry is with people, you know, look at me sometimes and think that there's something wrong with my brain. You know, just the other day, it was so interesting. The other day, I'm talking about 2 weeks ago, I was sitting on a plane with my wife, and we were going someplace, and then at the end of the trip, I have this scooter that I use, which we load onto the plane. So the flight attendant wanted to know whether I wanted to wait for the scooter or not. So she comes, the two of us, and she looks at my wife. She does his scooter. Is he going to use his scooter? Like I said, yes, I am. You know, I'm here. Excuse me. That's what makes me mad.
I understand.
That's what makes me that the people are like afraid to talk to me sometimes because they think that just because there's a problem, you know, with walking, there's also a problem with comprehension. You know.
Interesting. Okay, come back to the violin.
Yes.
Okay, so 3 years old, then you throw it under the bed.
Yes.
And how does it ultimately come into your hands?
Well, 4 years old, I say, okay, let's really do it seriously, and then it's.
But
not
does
the
this come
same
from
fiddle.
you as a 4-year-old?
Yes.
Or are your parents encouraging you?
No. My wish to play is for me.
Why?
I just like the sound. You know, I enjoyed it. You know, I will hear it on the radio, and I said, that's what I want.
Okay. I've read that one of the strengths that you bring to the violin is that you have large hands. Is that true?
No.
Okay. So that, again, there's so much.
I mean, large hand is
That's not an
is what I've got.
Okay.
You know, it's not like, you know, you have a small hand, you can't be a fiddle player.
Okay.
You
Okay.
know?
Was it true that when you first auditioned, they said your hands are too small? Is
No.
that true?
No.
The whole story's bogus.
They said that I was too small.
You were too small.
Yes.
Okay.
I was too young.
Okay. From 4 on, you're playing the violin?
Yes.
And meanwhile, your parents are telling you, Itzhak, you have to practice.
Right.
Because you would have been like any other kid, you would have been outside playing.
Right.
You understand that the images that somehow you, who become what you become, must have loved practicing from
Oh,
day one?
God, I hated it. I couldn't wait for the thing to end, because I had to practice. I had my first teacher was a Russian lady, and she was a taskmaster, and she would blame my parents if I didn't sound good, and she would say, "You're not making him practice. All you're thinking about is other stuff. You have to make him practice." So my parents says, "Look, and my parents were not musicians,
They were not.
They were not musicians. And so all they knew about my practicing was if they heard a sound that was good, if there was emptiness in the room, why aren't you practicing, So I actually learned how to do certain things that would be the least amount of effort, but with some noise involved. So I would bounce the bow on the string, and I would just I just say, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm doing my exercises." But as a result, that actually helped me, because I have a nice bounce called spiccato, which is nice bounce because I did hours of this stuff.
Okay. By the way, I assume practicing is something that became part of your life your entire life.
Yes.
Did you ever get to a point where it was more enjoyable for you? Do you still hate to practice?
I hate the practice, but I know the importance of it, and I need it. I need. It's not that I need it. I now know when I need it, and because it has never been something that after a certain point of my life, I decided that practicing. Now that my parents are not forcing me to practice, I can practice whenever I want to, and whenever I need practicing. So what happens is that, when I have a concert, something like that, I know that certain pieces need a little polishing, then I do it.
Okay.
So I know what, some of my colleagues, for example, don't do it like that. They do it like daily, no matter what, routine, normal.
And that's
like
not
you
you?
wake up, that's not me. No, that's not me.
Interesting.
Wake up in the morning, you practice.
Okay.
The great Yasha Heifetz, when he stopped playing concert, still woke up in the morning, had breakfast, and then practiced. No matter what.
Okay. By the way, I've also read that the two violinists that seem to have unusual influence on you were Isaac Stern and Heifetz. Is that correct?
It's sort of, yeah.
That may be
This
more
is
it's
more
better
correct
than
than
the
other
story.
stuff you said.
Okay. All right. So I want you to talk to me for one moment about the creative process. And when I knew that I was going to get to talk to you, the ability to talk to somebody who has had your journey, to be able to talk about the creative process was very exciting for me, because I want to know, first of all, at what point in your own life, in your own arc, do you begin to realize that you have a unique gift? When does some, you heard all the things, and what I said, I could have gone on for an hour just about what you've done. You're an unusual human being when it comes to the violin. And at some point, you've got to begin to understand that. And I want to know when that begins. And the reason I want to do it in the context of talking about your parents is, I also want to know, how did they as parents ever get it, Itzhak? Did they ever say, "Oh my goodness, our son has something so extraordinary, we have to do whatever to make sure he has the chance to develop"?
Well, obviously. Look, think about it. We're growing up in Israel, and my parents sort of are kind of settled, and then Ed Sullivan comes to Israel and listens to a bunch of people play and invites me to his show. And
Personally?
Personally, yes. I mean, what he did was he wanted to have a show made of only Israeli artists.
Do you know why?
Because he wanted to.
Okay.
That's what he wanted to.
Okay.
I believe that his wife may have been Jewish or half Jewish or whatever.
Okay.
So, and he had a soft spot for Israel.
Interesting.
Lovely gentleman. So there were auditions throughout the country, and then he came and listened to the finalists, and I was one of the finalists.
Where was this?
Tel Aviv.
Okay.
Tel Aviv, in the ZOA building, the Zionist Organization of America. There's a building there.
Okay.
Anyway, so.
And you remember this moment?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was very, very exciting. Very exciting.
You're 13 years old?
Yes. So I do this, and he chooses me to be on this show. So what do my parents do? My parents have to separate. I go to New York with my mother, and a year later, my father sells the business At that time, we had a laundromat, believe it or not. I mean, they were chameleons. Whatever came, he had to sell everything, sell the apartment, sell this, sell that, uproot and just come. So, pretty good for parents to do something for their sons. So that defines how they felt about this and how serious they were. And of course, the affirmation that that there was something valuable about what I was doing as a musician made them do that.
Okay, and come back to your own self-awareness. When do you begin to feel that there's a gift you have?
About 6 months ago.
Are you saying in a way it's hard for you?
Now that I'm getting old, finally appreciate me.
I don't believe you. I don't believe you.
Well, no. Look, it's not so far from the truth. Usually what
you took it for granted as a 13-year-old?
I did what I did. I played. It's not like I'm saying, oh, I'm playing and I'm so much better than so on and so forth. No, I'm doing what I needed to do and the best that I could do. But the feel of being, actually sometimes what I feel is I feel very lucky that I'm able to do certain things. And the more teaching I do, which I've done for many, many years now, the more I see problems. I'm teaching, the students that I teach are extremely talented. So within that talent, there is always something that may or may not come naturally to somebody, or something that comes naturally to me. And then I said, come on, you just do that. They say, yeah, right, easy for you to do, right? So those are some of the times when I say, I think that, there's something, I do have some sort of talent there that I can do certain things that come to me very, very naturally and very instinctively, which is one of the things that, one of the goals, of every student is to be able to, I was talking to somebody the other day about what do you feel musically you want to do? And then they said to me, I feel like I want to do it, but it doesn't come out. So the goal is to, when you feel something like this, that you automatically do technically what is necessary to make it spontaneous, to make it inspiring, without actually saying, okay, now I'm supposed to do this, so I'm going to do this with my hand, that with my hand. So it's got to be automatic. And so I can do that. Now, could I have done it 30 years ago? Probably not as good as I could do it today. I mean, that's people ask me, what's the difference between you're playing 30, 40 years ago and you're playing today? And I said, it evolves. It's an evolved process. Can you be more specific about what's different? No, you cannot be more specific. It's something that all I can say is that I would listen to a recording of me doing a piece 30 years ago, and I would say, it's very good, but I wouldn't do it like that today. I would do something maybe a little bit there, a little bit this, and so on. So,
you created the Perlman music program.
Wrong. Now there's another misconception.
Please.
My wife created the Perlman.
Your wife is Toby.
Toby, yes. That was strictly Toby's idea.
No kidding.
Toby's dream.
Are you glad you did it?
Oh, absolutely.
She was right.
Oh yeah. Well, the thing is that this was something that somebody offered her to start a kind of a summer program, and I was not in that discussion or anything like that. And she said, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to do it. So it was fine. And I was totally uninvolved in that. And the first year, we had no place to be. So we did it. We rented an existing camp for a couple of weeks with no rooms, not too many rooms. So I remember during the first 2 weeks of that program, there were kids in our house practicing in every room, practicing scales at 8 o'clock in the morning. And my wife, Toby, she says, that's the greatest pleasure that I hear, to wake up to people playing scales. Because that's the way we all grew up, when we went to music camp and so on and so forth. Music camp.
Did you meet your wife in music camp?
Yes, that's the word. That's a sort of a slight model of what this Perlman music program is right now.
Where was this?
It was at Meadowmount. It's called Meadowmount, which was in the Adirondack Mountains.
How old were you?
I was when I first went there was 14.
And
when
you
I
first
first
met
met
her?
Toby, I was 17.
So you're a kid.
Yeah. And so she.
You had not yet won the prize.
Was
Leventrich.
just before.
Yes.
It was before.
So she was with you at that time?
Yeah.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
So she shared this journey with you.
Yeah.
And what's her musical instrument?
Violinist.
Violinist,
Violinist, you know. I mean, we studied with, one of the teachers we studied with, no, actually we studied with both the same teachers.
Who?
No, she did not study with Golub, but we both studied with Dorothy DeLay.
Yes.
So, so anyway, so that was her sort of dream to do this. So she started this whole thing. Now, the first year, I was really not very involved in this. She asked me whether I would listen to somebody play and make some suggestions to the teacher, the teaching, and I did that. And within the second year, I was into it. In the third year, it
were
was
hooked.
just, no, and then she asked me to coach the students. They had we made a chamber orchestra, a string
Yes,
ensemble. So she said, would you coach it? Which actually was the way that I actually started to conduct. Was the first time as I started to coach the kids, which was conducting really, and the results were pretty good. So that's how I started to conduct.
Which you also love to do.
I love to do that. And so my conducting, the first orchestra that I conduct was the Israel Philharmonic.
Amazing.
That I conducted, yeah.
Oh, you win the prize,
Yeah.
Leventrich Prize at 18, 19.
18,
Okay.
yeah.
And you're now going to get to play with the New York Philharmonic Orchestra, which is conducted by Leonard Bernstein. Again, you know, we're adults now looking back.
Yeah.
And so we bring an adult perspective. When you're 18, 19 years old, do you appreciate what you're about to do? Was it a kick?
It was a kick. I did not play actually
With him?
A slight. At that time, it was not with him. It was with William Steinberg, another Yid. Anyway, but the thing is, later on in Israel, I actually played with Bernstein for his 50th birthday. We did we did the first Israeli television broadcast. Because, and still, Israel had TV, but it was from Jordan, from Syria, and so on. But the first real local broadcast was with Israel Philharmonic and Leonard Bernstein, and I was playing. But about the kick. The kick was winning that competition. That was the kick. And it was really probably one of the most frightening moments of my life. Throughout the thing, I actually did not remember anything when I was playing the rounds, the competition rounds. I was just going through, it was like through a haze. And after I won that, somebody came to me and said, how about entering the Tchaikovsky competition? And I said, why? I mean, why should I go through all the sorrows, that I went to with being nervous and this like that? I won this thing, basically what it gave me was management and like.
Is this Saul Hurak?
Saul Hurak, yes. And then I had opportunity to play with 4 or 5 major orchestras: New York Philharmonic, Cleveland, I think Detroit, I think Boston. That basically was the great prize. The money was, there was it's $1,000. Just but there was a recording, an RCA, a debut recording. So that's what I needed. When somebody said to me, "Why don't you go to another competition?" I said, "I don't need this. The competition is something that has to bring you something. I got what I wanted.
Fascinating.
The rest is up to me."
Fascinating. Do you still become nervous before a performance?
Oh yeah. Nervous depending on the. I find it fascinating, but nerves. I think nerves are so unpredictable. You play in this huge place, very important and so on, and I think I'm going to get nervous, and I don't. Then I play in a small town. For some reason, you get a little bit nervous. But nerves, when my students ask me, what do you do about nerves? I say to them, well, there's nothing you can do about it, but what you can do is you can befriend it. You can be familiar with what you feel, how you feel when you're nervous, and so become familiar so that it's not something that's strange to you, that it's something that you know about. It's a friend.
You've described the way it worked for you personally, and here you are doing something, and as you're doing it, it's not so much about self-reflection. But then you did become part, because of your wife's idea, you now help other young violinists. And my daughter goes to school at Horace Mann with Gil Shaham, and I get to meet Gil. And again, he's a high school kid, but he's already performing at a very high level.
Yeah.
And now he's again a world-class violinist. And you've seen young people evolve as well. Do you think you see something that is different about who they are as people? Not simply technically. You're a great violinist, not simply because you're technically good, but somehow, people write about the heart that you're able to put into the music, the interpretation, which has nothing to do necessarily. You've got to be talented with the fingers, but it's far beyond fingers, isn't it? And the question is, are you able to see that in a young person and imagine where they're going to be in life?
It's difficult.
It is difficult.
It's very difficult. You sometimes you see that there is promise. You see that the ingredients are there, and then it's. I don't want to say it's a crapshoot, but there's so many things that can go right, and there's so many things that can go wrong. And when I listen to talents, I'm always more impressed by people who actually sound age appropriate. In other words, when somebody sounds like you close your eyes and you hear a 25-year-old person, and this kid is only 11 or 12. I say, well, that's really nice, but will it stay that way? Or will this kid survive their talent? I was like, will they survive their gift? And that has to do a lot with the support system or lack thereof, what kind of parents you have, how you are as your own person, what kind of growth you have, and so on. And everybody, in my experiences in listening to kids, everybody has their own schedule of growth. And I always like to compare it to wine. When you drink wine from the barrel, and it tastes very tannic and so on, the experts says, we know that in 5 years or 10 years, this is going to be something great. It's the same thing with kids. And actually, my wife, Toby, she really is fantastic at that. Sometimes when we hear the kids who apply to our program, they go to the website of the program music program, they send us tapes of DVDs to apply. And sometimes I hear somebody and says, I'm gonna forget about it. And she says, wait a second, there's something there. And she's got a fantastic batting average, because it doesn't show up right away, but like in 3-4 years, she said, I told you that this is going to be somebody terrific.
She's really good at it.
Oh yeah, she's got great. Well, it's something very subtle in who you hear,
yes.
and she's able to recognize those subtleties.
Did your parents have the joy of experiencing the arc that you went on? And
yes.
And did they?
Before before both of my mother died, actually, when she was 63 years old, and so
very young.
But I was already having a good career, so she had the nachas opportunity, and my father, of course, he died a little later.
But isn't that lovely for them?
Oh, it's great. It was
lovely
great
for them.
The only thing that he wanted to be a great grandfather, and that's the only thing that he.
A great grandfather.
Great grandfather, yes.
One of the things that's so interesting about you is that you have never tried to hide the Jewish dimension of your being. And very often celebrities, especially when they are as large as you are, they become...
Excuse me, I've been on a diet. Don't I'm not large.
You want
Zaftig, but not large yet.
very often they become part of the world. They are world figures, and very often they just sort of step back from Jewish identity and from connection with Israel. One of the things that I've noticed about you is you have done intimate work with the Israeli Philharmonic. You've been involved with klezmer music. You just did a concert, as we're taping now, a few months ago at the Barclays Center with Cantor Helfgott.
Right.
You've recorded Jewish music. I mentioned that you've won 4 Emmys, and some of them are for stuff that has a Jewish cast to it. I want you to speak to that in general. First of all, how do you feel about Jewish in general? And how do you feel about the fact that you are a public figure who is indeed known to be Jewish?
I'm Jewish. I'm a Jew. There's no denying it. I've never felt that this was something that I had to force myself to admit. This is something very natural. That's how I grew up. My family has grown up like that. They're identified, and so on. It's something very natural to me. I mean, now as far as the music is concerned, again, it's something that I heard as a child. When I do klezmer, when I never did klezmer before, like I don't know how many years ago that it first started. And then when the opportunity came, I said, this is nice, let me try that, and then I tried it and I said, oh, that comes sort of natural, and so on. So it never
Did you
really
feel you were
occurred to me.
musically slumming it when you did klezmer?
By slumming, you mean having...
That you somehow were playing something that was less of value musically?
No, absolutely not. I feel that, first of all, everything that you do, everything that I do, it has to be convincing. So, if I was not able to do it, I would not have done it. I worked with some terrific klezmer groups, and each one had a kind of like a mini lesson to teach me about style and stuff like that, which I found really fascinating, because there is a certain style that you do from Eastern Europe, and then there is something that's a little bit more Middle Easterish, as you go into Greece and so on, it changes and so on, which I found really very, very interesting.
Are you saying you're still learning?
Always. You always learn. I mean, my God, before you mentioned the Beethoven Violin Concerto, I'm right now teaching it to somebody, and I said to him, welcome to the start of your Beethoven Concerto journey. It's a lifetime journey, because that's what I feel. I feel that I'm still, every time that I play this piece, I still have a new outlook on what, slight more understanding is where this phrase goes, where that phrase goes. And this has been going on for, 50 years. It's ridiculous, I mean, it never stops.
And by the way, you told me that you don't like practicing.
No.
There are times when you get nervous before a performance.
Yeah.
And you talked about how when you were in this initial competition that was so important at Carnegie Hall, you don't even remember it.
Yeah, it was through a haze. Yeah.
Are there times now, and as we're talking, you're about to perform at Avery Fisher Hall after being away for 7 years, when you're going to be playing Beethoven and Vivaldi and Schumann at Avery Fisher Hall, will you be in the moment? Will you be enjoying it, or, in some way, is it a job you're doing at that time?
No, I'll be enjoying it.
You'll be enjoying it.
My job is enjoying what I'm doing. That's my job. You see what the luckiest thing that one can say about life is if you get to do something for a living that you love. And I'm one of the lucky people that get to do that. When I deal with art, what could be better than to deal with art and to enjoy what you're doing, still make a good living?
Yes. And what's more fun for you, by the way? Recording, and therefore when the recording is done, it'll be distributed all over the world and people will thrill to it that way, or being in a live performance?
Live performance.
There's nothing like it, is there?
No, live performance is great. And people, if people say to you, I have a recording of this piece, and it didn't sound the same. Thank you. Because that's the idea of live concerts is to experience the moment, what happens at the moment, and there's nothing like it.
And even for a musician, there is a relationship with the audience, is there not?
Always, always. The relationship is subtle, but it always has to come across the stage that you are there for an audience. That you are. It's not like you're there and none of your business what I'm doing, you know, and you have an invisible cube around you, where you're just going to go like that, you know. The audience have to feel that you have your enthusiasm about a piece of music has to be infectious. It has to go across the lights.
Does the audience ever give back to you during a performance?
Oh yes.
Yes.
Oh yes. There is sometimes, and you know, it's so funny. I've been playing all over the world, and each place has sometimes their own different way of showing it, you know. But it's still very much an international language. So you are, you know, so whether they show it in prolonged hand clapping, but polite, like they do, for example, in Japan, or with you know, like incredibly noisy, you know, raucous kind of thing where they do in Paris or in Milano or parts in the States and so on and so forth. You know, but it's all about the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Do you still have family in Israel?
Yes, not close, but cousins who are actually very, very friendly with our kids.
Okay.
You know,
Have
so
you
it's
had a
nice.
chance to travel to Israel?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's Israel mean to you?
It's my country of birth. It's my country that I grew up in. It's the country that gives me a lot of schmerz. It's just to what's going on, you know, and it's the country that forces me to believe that one day things will be better, because you know it's a real challenge. So much stuff that's going, and you say, how can that happen, and how can this happen, and how can that? And I have to say, one of these days it's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a Israel is a country that causes you to krechts. It's the krechts country, you know. But I suppose that's what the meaning of being Jewish is.
Yes. And if somebody said to you, what thrills you about Israel? The krech aside.
Well, listen, when you go there, you know, the achievements, the accomplishment of the Jewish people in this, what's going on in Israel is phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. You know, when you look, and we just have to look at who accomplished what, and you know, this invention and that invention, and the imagination and all that goes on. It's an amazing country,
Mm-hmm.
amazing country.
You've had the privilege of playing with the Israeli Philharmonic in a number of, not only in Israel, but around the world. One of the things you did was travel with them to Budapest and to Warsaw.
Mm-hmm.
Your parents were from Poland.
Mm-hmm.
When you went, it was, I believe, 1987.
If you say so. At my age, I forget.
In 87,
Yeah.
you're first in
Yeah.
Warsaw, then in Budapest. Then 3 years later, you traveled with the Philharmonic, the Israeli Philharmonic, to Moscow and to Leningrad, right after really the fall of
Just
the
at
Iron
the
Curtain.
cusp. Yeah, right,
Exactly
right. Yeah.
And so I was wondering whether, years aside, as you look back at those two trips, one to Poland and one to the former Soviet Union, did they mean something to you, you know, Itzhak Perlman as an individual, as a Jew going with the Israeli Philharmonic?
It was so exciting. It was so exciting. This was especially since several years before, and that was not publicized, we were supposed to go with Israel Philharmonic to Moscow to perform. And literally, as I was checking in at the airport to take the flight to Moscow, the concert was canceled. Because, you know, I always say that when the Israel Philharmonic goes to a place, it's like a barometer of what relationships between that country and Israel are all about. If we go there, that means that it's getting warmer. If we don't go there, then it means it's cold, mm-hmm. and so on. So going to Poland and to Hungary and so on, it was a little bit depressing though, because it was still in the midst of the
Yes.
of the communist situation. Of course, one of the great experiences, probably one of the most emotional experiences for me while we were there, is before one of the concerts in Moscow to hear Hatikva played by the Israel Philharmonic, and of course the tears, it was, and not too many people in the audience were singing it because maybe they didn't know the tune, but we were playing it, and I was backstage and I was going, oh my God, that was indescribable to hear that at that time. So I remember that.
That's a wonderful memory. Wow.
Yeah.
Any memory from the trip to Moscow or Leningrad that stands out in your mind?
Yeah, no food. Nothing. I went to Zabar's to get a bunch of, coffees and chocolates and cookies and stuff to distribute to players in the Leningrad Philharmonic, or to anybody, just because there's nothing. Orange juice? Who is that? Water? Mineral water? I had to wash, take a bath in water that looked like, I swear to you, looked like unfiltered apple juice. That was the color of it. So, but I'm told that these days things have changed a lot. As a matter of fact, I've been there several years ago after what's happening. It's a totally different
place.
Totally
Yes.
different place.
So here you are, a world famous musician. Do your children have any of your talent?
4 out of my 5 children are involved in music one way or another.
Wow.
So, but one of them is smart.
Yes.
He's a lawyer. He's not involved. But they're involved, one of my daughters is a concert pianist and she plays regularly.
Wow.
Do
you play with her ever?
I used to, but right now she's too busy, with 4 children and so on. And another daughter was a singer. She's not anybody. She still sings beautifully. Another one played the flute, but she's not doing that, but still plays beautifully. And then one son is involved in rock music and so on, but he doesn't do that and so on. So, but they're all involved in some ways.
That is lovely.
Yeah.
Has it been hard for them to be Itzhak Perlman's children?
Not as far as I'm concerned.
Good.
I mean, there is no. I'm not. I'm dad and granddad in my family.
How many grandchildren?
We have 9, and 2 more on the way. So we will
Mazal
have.
tov.
We will have
How
11.
fabulous!
Yeah. And each one of them doesn't do anything as far as music is concerned.
They're young still.
No, one of them is involved, but they're doing fine. They're doing fine. They're happy.
So the last thing I want to mention to you is, there are many people who have never heard you play. They're not even sure who you are, but they know you from Sesame Street. Do you understand that?
Yes.
And the fact that you would agree to do that, and were you with Kermit? Who were you with? You remember?
I was with several. I was with
Grover.
Big Bird. I was with the Grouch.
Yes.
I was with the guy his name is Telly.
Yes.
And he was always very pessimistic about himself.
Yes.
And then we played the duet. I said, Telly, that was very good. And he said, but it'll never happen again. He always had something sad to say about something negative. But anyway.
It was a brilliant show, was it not?
It was fantastic.
Just brilliant.
I love it. But the only bad thing about this is that when I'm backstage after a concert, people come to me and say, I saw you on Sesame Street. That makes me feel really old. Because they're already old, and they said, I remember seeing you on Sesame Street. So like, if you are so old and you already saw me, then how old am I? Let me remember.
First of all, you are still very, very young.
Thank you.
Got so much music.
Very sweet of you.
No, you're very young, and you've got an extraordinarily young soul. And I hope you understand how much you have done for all of us. No matter where somebody stands in the world of music appreciation, we know who you are, and you have given in so many, many ways. And you heard me say at the beginning of the show, I was really lucky myself, and I've been involved in Broadway productions a lot, and I've met a lot of very talented, wonderful people. And there's nobody like you. And the things that people say about you, now that you and I've had an hour together, they're more true than I even realized.
Well, there's nobody like me because we are all individuals. There's nobody like you, nobody like me.
Yes,
so.
but you know what I mean. It's very, very kind of you, and it's been wonderful to be able to sit with you. I'm hoping maybe one day we have a show very much like Sesame Street in a Jewish context. We call it Mr. Bookstein's Store. Maybe at one point you'll be able to do one little bit with our character fella, which is our puppet. But I want you to know, just to be able to sit with you, to talk about music, your life, your arc, has been an extraordinary honor for me.
Well, it was my pleasure. It was my pleasure.
You're
a good interviewer.
That's very sweet of you. I hope to be in the audience on December 3rd.
After all of this, Chazorah, might as well come,
I wish you kol tuva hatzlacha.
Thank you very much.
From strength to strength and success as you go on.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I mean it.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Itzhak Perlman, the world's greatest living violinist, an extraordinary human being, a profoundly committed Jew. I hope you've enjoyed meeting him on L'chaim as much as I have. What a kick. As always, please share any feelings you may have about any of the things Itzhak Perlman has had to say. Please email me, write me, post on our Facebook wall, or tweet me. I look forward to hearing from you. And please don't forget the date, December 3rd, 2014, when Itzhak Perlman will be returning to Avery Fisher Hall for his first solo performance at Lincoln Center in 7 years, when he'll be performing the works of Vivaldi, Schumann, Beethoven, and Ravel. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. L'chaim, my friends, to life.
L'chaim is a presentation of Jewish education in media.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support Shalom TV on JBS with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more, to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media. Simply visit the Shalom TV website homepage and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check made out to Jem, P.O. Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York, 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.